Welcome back, guys, to the ANZ HGC Premier Division for week number 2, and it's night number 1, and already it's off to a banger. My name is Skimmy. I got GL Phoenix to me with my side, and I mean, that game, that series that we just witnessed, we could not predict, all of us, every single caster, even on the podcast as well. Crimson, without a doubt, they had a stronger team, but that wasn't just a 2-0 scoreline with a lot of details that you need to inspect. That was a pretty decisive victory.
Yeah, it was, as you mentioned, just not something we really expected. I mean, last week, looking at how Downfall played in some of their matches, they were kind of a little bit iffy here and there, and Crimson had been very strong coming into it, and we were expecting Crimson to really just stamp their foot down and really just take control of that series, but it was kind of the opposite. Downfall just really having their number throughout that entire series, even throughout the draft, just knowing how to deal with that team.
And it really then showcases how this game is influenced, right? And the ability to draft and single-handedly from a draft alone dictate the pace of that game. But on to our next series. Once again, you've just seen Crimson on stream. If you did miss it and you thought, I didn't want to watch that game, I want to watch this one, definitely jump back to the VODs to see how things have shaped up to get us to this point in time. Crimson up against Outlaws. This is the big one. Originally, it was going to be Nomiya up against Neko Mimi, but that schedule has changed as a result of some roster shuffle and some roster issues that have been taking place. Neko Mimi, meaning they have forfeited, but it means that we then get to see Crimson up against Outlaws, which is, in many people's opinion, set to be, second and third seed up against each other?
Yeah, coming into the season, they were seeded 2 and 3, just based on the qualification, and as these two teams did qualify from the last year's ANZ Finals LAN. Yeah. So they did come in as those higher seeds, and we were expecting them to be two of the teams fighting out for that second place spot. But after that previous series, I'm not really too sure what to think right now.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of an understatement, but let's crack on into this one. I'm looking at what we had ready and rock and rolling with, and Outlaws, they decided to ban away Cursed Hollow. Crimson banned away Braxis, and that means we are ready to rock with Outlaws going for Tomb of the Spider Queen. And GL, you know what this means. 2 games, 2 first picks for Crimson. Is this the secret to beating them?
That's the thing I was saying earlier. It's I'm not sure if it's just a team thing, but we just saw throughout the majority of the Western Clash, second pick just has so much power, because not only are you picking a map where you know what you're doing and you're much more comfortable on, you get to pick up 2 very strong heroes in that first rotation for yourselves, whereas you're only really giving up 1. It gives you the opportunity to play around it, or at least draft around it, as we saw in the previous series. Downfall drafting incredibly intelligently against whatever it was that Crimson were trying to pull out.
That they were indeed, and now we're going to see some very different strategies going into this one. Obviously, these teams would scrim each other outside of the tournament games and would develop and understand their own drafts and understandings of each other in terms of play styles and picks and counter picks and just even posturing. And did a little bit of that before when I was looking through some of these replays to understand these teams at a deeper level. But the bans themselves, we're going to open up with a Maiev ban, and we're going to respond with a Blaze ban. So first pick now is going to be a Malfurion.
Yeah, we saw that banned in both of the games in the previous series. So we saw Downfall not really wanting to deal with it, respecting the power that it has, and already we're having Outlaws understanding that it is a very strong pick currently in the meta. So picking it up immediately, but it does give up quite a few options over to the side of Crimson. Things like the Tyrael, even the Tracer, which we saw didn't really have the same amount of impact as we were expecting it to have in that last series, but it is still a very strong hero. And if they do not pick it up right now, it is an option for Outlaws to pick up, to pair up with that Malfurion.
And just to correct from before, it looks to me as if first pick is actually for Outlaws, so I believe the information would have been incorrect, that Crimson must have picked this map then, because they, for the first time, may actually be breaking the curse. And they're going to be getting
indeed,
2 picks.
Indeed. I think they probably realized from that previous series that first pick doesn't necessarily have the same strength that it might entail. And it is going to be the Tracer and the Tyrael. So 2 heroes, very strong right now. And as I mentioned, not wanting to allow that combination of the Tracer and the Malfurion to be paired up together.
That they won't, and still respecting what the Tracer can do, and oddly so, because I would argue that there are, 3 to 4 very strong styles of play right now. Maiev being one, Tracer being another. If you take away one, you've got to ensure that you get the other right. Otherwise, you pass far too many strong heroes into your opponent's court. So, despite what happened last game, they are sticking to their roots. They are, you'd imagine, still quite comfortable and confident in this pick. And why would you not be? You know what it can do. You've just got to try and move on to this next series, which can be incredibly hard, especially when you've got the community breathing down your neck, watching all this unfold.
Yeah, and especially after a rather painful 2-0 defeat that they just suffered, it's going to be very important that they just readjust themselves, not really think too much into it, just move on to the next game, just recompose themselves, and just get ready for this next series.
Greymane and Johanna are the response straight away. Greymane, you understand. Very strong hero, despite the changes. He is a hero which hasn't really fallen down in terms of priority, but then again hasn't really gone up either. He's stayed in his relative power level.
Yeah, he just kind of maintains himself.
Yeah.
He's still kind of a jack of all trades. He just doesn't have the same oppressive power of that cocktail build that just dominates. Yeah, it was a little bit frustrating, but he's a little bit more balanced, I believe, but he still has a lot of strength elsewhere. And the Johanna, very strong wave clear, and especially on a map like Tomb of the Spider Queen, where wave clear is kind of the name of the game. You need to be able to clear those waves, grab those gems, and be the proactive party, making the plays around the map, and also just controlling those turn-in areas.
100%, and we saw what happened on Infernal Shrines, right? If you got a team with a superior wave clear, you can dictate those rotation paths. On a map like this, when you're going from mid to top and mid to top, to get those gems, to get that XP, and to try and reach those levels quicker, if you're the one that is doing that faster, you are once again dictating that rotation through the middle part. And that alone is a mentality of, hey, we are in control. And if you have this sort of divey comp like we've seen Crimson run tonight, and you're forced to play passive, once again, alarm bells start to ring.
Yeah, and that's one thing we need to see out of Crimson in this series. We need to see them be the proactive team. They were put on the back foot so often in that previous one by Downfall that they need to reassert themselves, especially with a composition like this. They need the Tracer to be on the aggressive side of things. If she's just trying to play on the defense, she's not really going to have a good time. She doesn't have the wave clear, doesn't have the defensive tools to really mitigate some proactive play. So Crimson need to be the one on the front foot.
So let's talk about this. Currently they're hovering the Stukov. That would make sense based on what we've discussed earlier. More, I suppose, the thing I'm more curious on is that rag band, right?
It makes sense for the map. It is a hero that does find more priority on a map like this, where it is a smaller map, and the Molten Core can hit multiple areas, multiple important areas at a single time, and also can deal with those web weaver phases reasonably well, and also brings a decent amount of control, amount of wave clear. So I'm not too surprised to see the Ragnar's ban. It's just whether or not it is the most optimal ban considering what we have here.
Where do Crimson go from this one? They've been looking a little bit one-dimensional tonight in their approach to these games, all about dive-heavy style of play, but it hasn't panned out for them. Obviously, these first two picks definitely go towards that idea, but we do need to see some wave clear from them so far. Tracer and Two do definitely lack in that regard. Johanna being taken off the board. A couple of different ideas to consider, but it's what direction they go with that one. Tracer is fantastic with the wave clear, but so is Gul'dan, and I like the Gul'dan pick a lot for the sole reason that Gul'dan can single-handedly do a lot of work at trying to disrupt what the Greymans are trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Very good at the wave clear, and as you mentioned, very good at dealing with that Greymane. If he is to dive in, that Horrify just throws him into a different direction, and he is not going to have any fun trying to get out of there. So a good option, especially with what we have right here, right now. And I'm really liking this composition coming out of Crimson so far. Yes, the Tracer doesn't necessarily have the same support structure with, say, the Malfurion or even the Tassadar that we would like to see her with, but there are still supports that can allow her to be a little bit more freer in her aggressive plays. But it's just a very well-rounded composition that we have so far coming out from Crimson.
Based on what this is alone, you'd be expecting to see like what the Horrified paired with the Pulse Bomb to make sure that there is somebody like an Ufa on the side of Outlaws as well. But there's no way to really disrupt that. But they go for the Chromie, no double support shenanigans this time around. This one's all about the burst potential, really. It almost seems a little bit reminiscent to how Darksided were back in 2017 with their Cover to player Hacky playing Chromie on this map. This was their home style map, right? This was their go-to.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where they netted many, many wins. So, once again, two very distinct compositions. But the Chromie, much like the Geno of last game, squishy in nature, but as soon as she's got that timeout like the ice block, can definitely make those plays.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this matchup goes with the Chromie and the Tracer. The Tracer can get onto her rather quickly, but as you mentioned, the time traps can be useful, the timeout, and it allows her to at least delay a lot of what Tracer wants to do. And it's going to be very interesting to see how these fights go, at least when it comes to level 10. If we do end up seeing, say, the Entomb coming out of the Yorick, allowing pretty much any target in there to just be subject to pretty much the sand in a box, just getting blown up immediately without too much ways of getting out of there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this one goes. It's actually going to be the Lucio to finish it off, so wanting to give it a little bit more mobility for these low mobility heroes like the Gul'dan and the Arthas. That's one thing we didn't really mention, is that as Arthas, he doesn't really have the best ways into these fights and doesn't really go forward all that well. But with that Lucio, he has that speed boost. He can help him to really catch out some of that back line.
And this has been a go-to pairing for such a long time with the Arthas and Malf, or Arthas and Lucio, really allowing him to get into that back line or to chain CC together. And with the Lucio addition, the Frozen Tempest is going to be the go-to. What this suggests to us, right, is they want to put a lot of pressure onto this back line, and if the fight's not going too well, they can indeed back out. One point I wanted to touch on briefly was the fact that Chromie, in many cases, could almost be argued as a counter towards a Tracer. Now, you might be scratching your head thinking, well, how is that a thing? Because it's a skill shot. Very hard skill shot in some capacity against all these blinks, but the bronze talons alone is like, it's like a quarter or like even a third of like Tracer's health bar, right? It's disastrously strong. So expect to see Lahal not be too afraid, but at the same time be conscious of his health ball.
Yeah, with those bronze talons, you can just start auto attacking a Tracer to death essentially if she's not too careful. And as I mentioned, she doesn't necessarily have the same support structure. Sure, she has the Lucio who's healing, doesn't really kick up all that much until later game, especially level 16. And apart from that, she has Tyrael shields, which is, sure, they're quite nice, but it's not necessarily the same strength that you get out of, say, something like a Malfurion or a Tassa. So that Tracer has to be a little bit more careful considering what they're going up against.
Here we are, game number 1 of series number 2 of the night. It's Crimson up against Outlaws, and it all comes down to Tomb of the Spider Queen to start things off with. Will Crimson find more success, or will Outlaws be warmed up enough to keep them in a 2-0 predicament? That's what we're going to find out here. It's all eyes on Azure once again to try and meet his mark. Yes, he has a double support, actually a double DPS to follow it up this time. So now all the pressure's on him to try and deliver that packing blow.
Yeah, there's one thing to really note, the difference in drafting from the previous series to this one for the side of Crimson is that they have opted for an additional damage source that isn't necessarily a diving force. Before they were really intent on those dive style compositions, but when that didn't work, they had no really comeback mechanics built into their compositions, whereas now they have the Gul'dan, who's able to output a considerable amount of damage from that backline and also bring a lot of control, and should be able to at least mitigate a lot of losses should they get put onto the back foot.
So far, so good, as they both rotate between lanes at a rather even pace. Johanna matching the Gul'dan in that capacity. You can see Shadow how aggressive he's playing so far, trying to find members out of position, go for that Sonic Boom, look for those initial picks. Altivian is making light work so far. He has gone for the Echo Corruption at level 1, which should find a fair bit of value if he can get those stacks up quite an early.
Yeah, that's one thing we need to see them get reasonably early, and we need to see those corruption stacks really get going, because if they're not able to get the value out of their Gul'dan, as I mentioned, they don't necessarily have that considerable long-range threat on the side of Crimson. So already we see him there picking up a couple of stacks there, so able to at least force away the members of Outlaws. And with those reasonably low HP bars, they can cop a bit of pressure, as we are seeing a nice rotation coming in from the side of Crimson.
It's actually interesting to note that both Azure and Coffee, both the DPS carries, went down to the bottom lane to try and influence that solo matchup. But both almost left in a bit of a stalemate, realizing, well, I'm not going to go in if you don't, so let's back on and get back to the mid lane and carry on this this dancing of back and forth just to farm the gems. Right now it is pretty even, with a slight gem advantage for the side of Crimson, but you'll see most of the times that teams will either wait till level 7 or till level 10 to try and get that hand in and influence the XP in their advantage that way.
Yeah, we're just seeing some holding patterns essentially for both sides, not too aggressive for either team, just wanting to at least play it cautiously, not wanting to overextend and get caught out is a nice corruption. Does hit onto the members of Outlaws, doing a decent amount of damage and get a couple of stacks, but a nice aggressive play coming in. The Tracer doesn't manage to finish off Hiccup, but good pressure coming out from Azure.
Yeah, that's the pressure of the Pulse Bomb in the early game. It doesn't really do too much damage, but it's pressure you have to always be constantly aware of, and it can be deceivingly strong in some cases, right? You might think it's going to do a lot, but it doesn't. In other cases, it might do a ton. And what is a really interesting adaptation for me is at level 4, Vengeful Roots. Now, this is a talent which allows a treant to spawn when you put those roots down. What I am seeing from this is much like an Anubrak with his beetles, it's looking to try and deny skill shots. In this case, potentially preventing Hiccup from getting one-shot by a Pulse Bomb.
Yeah, that's going to be another thing that Crimson are going to have to deal with. And also, notably enough, the timely surprise coming out for the Chromie, not going for that Bronze Talons, as we do have a kill on the bottom side of the map. So great little pickup there, allowing a bit of room to push with this blue Web Weaver phase. So a great start to the game coming out of Crimson.
Rotation does pay off this time for Azure, as the hand-in is now achieved as a result of that map being opened up. What's interesting to me is that, yeah, Bronze Talons wasn't even picked up. They've increased the casting range of this. Also looking for more burst potential. So this is Lahal to a nutshell, right? This is a guy, this is a funny story. For those of you that don't follow the ANZ scene, this is a guy without a degree of passion. Hates this hero. He absolutely hates it. He's super vocal about this. But now he is given in to the champion itself. He is committing to it.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, he hasn't really gone all in with the time trap build. He has gone with the Dragon's Eye at level 7, so not wanting to... Well, he's kind of going for an all sorts kind of build so far.
Still there.
We good there, Skimmy?
I think we are. I think we're ready to rock and roll.
All right. So, able to keep on going. So, the Web Weaver phase, essentially getting what you expect from the first phase of Web Weavers, just a whole bunch of outer towers and allowing the attacking team to just explode, but just push some of that XP lead and try and get into a position for either a back-to-back hand-in or just get into a position where they can control the map even further.
Mercenaries are being picked up. Both the night camps. A map where the mercenaries don't really matter for the most part. They are just a side quest, if anything, right? A reason to try and force some aggression, try and force some action to take place, which is looking to be the case right now. 10 gems are in the bank so far for the side of the Outlaws. They have enough to go for that hand-in, but they're hanging on for the meantime. A healthy 1-level lead for Crimson as they reach their way to level 10. No temporal lead this time. It's all about slowing sands, looking for that point control combined with root. You've got a lot of lockdown potential. Potentially Gondo even going for the Entomb. Lucio can't run from everything.
Yeah, he is going to cop a lot of damage, and interestingly enough, it is going to be the... Oh, they do get a lockdown onto Hiccup as he is not able to survive that. He gets demolished. Great pick up there for Azure.
Second pick onto Malfurion this far, and despite him going for the vengeful roots, it wasn't enough to prevent death. They jump onto Lahal in the back line. They get time trapped out, but it does not matter. 4 boys at a moment's notice on his head saying, "We will take down the little gnome that you are." And, well, it's a bit unfortunate really for the Outlaws because they hand in those gems, but they don't have the members available at this stage to actually push with, so it's slightly hampered. Level 10 is there for Crimson, so it's all up to them to try and sort of almost dictate in a reversal of objective control.
Yeah, it is although it is good that they managed to get a hand in, it is going to be mitigated a lot because of that fight, and also because of the heroic advantage coming out for Crimson. It's, well, ideally, it's going to allow Crimson to be much more aggressive around the map and allow themselves to clean these up without too much issue. But Outlaws, Iceball Water, he doesn't really care about that heroic advantage, wanting to push forward, and looks like all of Outlaws just want to keep on pressuring.
That they do indeed. Gondo going deep into the back line. The Horrify comes out, but it doesn't find the pick that they were after. As the Outlaws continue their siege up in this top lane. ADA is going for the aggression. The frozen tempest is available. The rest of the team are pushing on in. The root comes down. The team collapse. They're going to go for the pulse bomb. Oh! They got down to 90, and now Shadow was on the hunt. He's saying, I want the kill. Support these schools for half of them choke. Two of the squishiest members are so
there we go.
And bang goes the damage. Two people picked up far too quickly, but it doesn't seem to matter because Poppy responds by taking down Tracer. It is a 2-for-1. And it is a still 1 level lead advantage.
Yeah, brilliant fight coming out for Crimson. This composition, that's essentially what you want to be doing with it. You want to be cleaning up that back line. And this front line, the Johanna and the Leoric, yeah, they've got a lot of durability and they can stick around for quite a while, but when you're not really defending anything, there's only so much you can really do. But yeah, great pickoffs coming there for Crimson. And this is going to give them a whole bunch of room to be able to get another hand in. And they can just keep on applying the pressure.
And then goes across, and that's going to add a lot of influence to them because they're going to be well on their way to level 13. 12 being just acquired now. And Ultimate's ready to rock and roll. What do we have? We have Horrify as well as the Sound Barrier ready to go. 57% on that pulse bomb. Looking for the all-important one-shot. The flip side of that being every ultimate except the go for the throw is there in the side of Outlaws. Now, expecting Crimson to wait till 13 before they commit. This is just to me, we're going to have every ultimate available, and the big wombo coming out as that Entomb lands.
Yeah, they're able to get it down, but they're not able to get any follow-up as KVA is doing so much work. The Leoric goes down without any follow-through coming in from the rest of Outlaws, and it looks like they're just going to keep on bleeding members as Lahal gets cleaned up. A great fight coming out for Crimson, turning it on its head.
Look at this, two picks picked up very quickly. Gondo running into the back line, looking to try and isolate, and I said, well, you know, they're probably going to wait till level 13, but no, they run straight on in, almost saying we need to fight before they hit 13. The team did not seem to be on the same page as a result. Crimson punish, and they punish hard. They've set up this top lane, almost as if they're considering going for a boss, but with every member being available, I'm wondering if that is still going to be the call, because Entomb has a very short cooldown, and like we said, the zoning potential, if they are stuck in a choke point like that between both Entomb and the Chromie's slowing sands, pretty hard to back out of a situation like that.
Yeah, they have a decent amount of zone control on the side of the Outlaws, but they're just not able to get the follow damage to hit because of the amount of threat coming in on the backline, because of the Tracer, and also just the corruption running through. There's just so many things that this backline of Outlaws need to be dealing with that they can't really just lay all of that damage through onto the Entombed members. And they are going to start working their way towards this boss, and Outlaws are making their way towards it. This could be a very dangerous play coming out from Crimson. And they realize that, and they're actually just going to back away.
It's not worth the risk, and they realize that as well. Obviously, between the ability, like we discussed before, as well as the reveal coming out there from Chromie to scout out the exact situation, there was no reason to stick around and take any unnecessary chances, especially after the series you just had before against Downfall. You want to almost regain that confidence, get the morale back up, and if you're thinking on the same page as before, you're thinking Outlaws is the stronger team. Well, a lot of that's been blown out of the water so far because it is Crimson with a 7-1 lead in the kill count. Yes, this is the map they wanted, and yes, this is them running away from the first pick. Is this a case of maybe just the first pick being cursed?
It could very well be. With discussing it throughout this night, as Crimson did suffer the defeat to Downfall, both of those defeats coming with their first pick, and I'm not sure if it is necessarily a curse thing, but there's got to be something going on in the draft that just makes it so this second pick just ends up in a much better position coming out of it. But already we are getting closer to level 16 for the side of Crimson. A nice Dragon's Breath does land onto Lord, but he's still fine with that Drain Breath, draining off the life, but Iceball taking so much damage.
That's so low, but he almost gets hit by the Osman as well. Timmy, he has to pop the Consumed Soul to get that minion's health. He goes in with the Blitz Shoot. Entomb is down to 2 people. Are they going to pop that Saint? No chance for this one. The fear comes across. Can they find the pick? Twilight Dream is good. And the Ice Block to follow, but it's not going to be enough. They're still looking for the first move of Crimson.
But look at him!
Ulti! He's letting Drain Soul, but it doesn't matter. Coffee gets the kill. He gets out. He disengages with the stealth. 2 members are on him, but his backline is completely
the gems! The gems!
The gems are gone. It's Lahal left to try and pick up the pieces, but what can you do? You can't do anything. Yes, they killed Gul'dan, but you lost so much map control.
Yeah, he just delayed his death so long. He was able to drain life for so long that they were not able to get it cleanly enough, and the rest of his team was just getting cleaned up. So Outlaws taking so many losses. They are down to 16 talent. They are down 2 levels. Crimson, they do manage to lock him into the Entomb, but the damage follow-up, those bronze talents could be working out a hell of a lot right there.
Really cut off. Azure gets away with 100 health.
Oh, no.
Ice Bolt doing Ice Bolt things, just deciding to try and chuck that one out.
It's almost like trying to do the Thrall thing where you try and snipe someone with the Chain Lightning. Just trying to do that with a Blessed Shield, but not getting it to work that time. And unfortunately, Crimson are going to maintain control around the map.
The timeout was there, negates the Pulse Bomb. He goes to the recall into an Entomb and runs away with 100 health. If that's not the story of this game so far for Outlaws, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's a very good position for Crimson. Outlaws trying to get the fights to work, trying to get the synergy to really shine through, but they're just not able to get the follow-up onto the Entomb because there's so many tools on the side of Crimson that they're able to just negate that. If it's not the Azure on the Tracer just demolishing that backline, it's things like the Sound Barrier and the Sanctification just completely negating any damage coming out from the Outlaws lineup. So there's so many tools that they have to completely just ignore this composition's strengths.
This is Crimson starting to force the fight. They've got the 16 advantage. They bait them in by having 59 gems there. They start the boss and say, look, come to us. We want to fight. We're going to draw you in.
Oh, there we go.
Onto one. It's onto KVA. Sanctification lands on down. They're getting a lot of that damage.
There we
but
go.
The Pulse Bomb is so disgustingly good. Just taking him on out. But the Twilight Dream is even better, taking out Arthur's response. Now can they find a second? Yes, they can. Johanna is dead. The backline is exposed. The ice blocks, are they there? Can they be utilized? Because they are on the hunt. They want more. They want the triple kill. Now they want the the corruption. Chromie, and in an instant, it's a 4-for-1. Oh, Crimson, just like that. Bait, switch, and they collapse and get the fight they were exactly after.
Exactly, and this is the Crimson that we were expecting coming into the night. The team that is very aggressive and very disciplined in these fights. Yes, they did end up losing a member. KVA not really able to stick around, especially with the Great Twilight Dream just negating a lot of his sustain options. But still, they were able to clean up that fight. So much damage, and Crimson are in a brilliant position right now.
Well, they can time this one quite slowly. You can see Jesmes is waiting for the meantime, and no need to pick the one up too quickly. He's going to go for the cap now. They're going to have the hand in it as well. That is a lot of pressure, a lot of map pressure, with you being on your way to level 20 as well. It almost puts your opposition into a bit of a checkmate situation.
Yeah, there is a big wave on the bottom side in favor of the Outlaws, but they're just not too worried about that. They're just Crimson are just pushing all of their pressure into this top side of the map with the boss and also these web weavers. They want to end the game right now.
Web weavers are descending. It's up to Lahal to try and poke from afar. Can he prevent this all in? Because if the pick happens now, it is game set and done like that. The boss is down to half. As the keep is dropping down to half itself. Icebolt just looking for that fight. The Pulse Bomb lands on towards Gondor, but it's immediately negated by the fact that there is a drained soul up. KVA pops that Army of the Dead. He's looking to try and survive. The core is going to fall. The Web Weavers are now here. They go for Hiccup, which, I mean, he's already popped his Ice Block despite being under no real pressure. And Azure spotting that one says, I can go in now for a Pulse Bomb. He's building up the stacks. He's at 80% as the core is now starting to be jumped upon.
Yeah, and the Rejuvenescencia at 16 for the Lucio is doing so much work, keeping the team nice and healthy as they do use the Sound Barrier, and they are very healthy in this fight, and they want to clean this up. Great Horrify going on to Coffee. He does get out, and this gives an opportunity as they do manage to kill the Tyrael.
They do indeed. They double stack that one between Sang and Sound Barrier. But Furion absolutely popped between a Tyrael passive and a corruption from Ultivian. They make a bad situation look in some regard a little bit clean, because now they're going to get a double keep for their efforts. Can they go for the trifecta down to the bottom lane? Yes, they can, by picking up Leoric as a side project. They go for Coffee as well. Yes, they do. A triple kill for triple keeps. And surely that is enough right now, GeoPhoenix, to go for the end.
That is probably going to be it. An attempted play coming out of Coffee, but it was just a little bit too little too late. They are going to fall in this first game as Crimson, after a rather disappointing first series of the night, they're coming back in strength and they dominate this first game of this series.
Well, questions were asked at the start of this one. Were Crimson tilted or were Outlaws warmed up? Case could be made for both, but the scoreline really reflects what happened so far. 19 kills to 4. as a very similar team composition with one adjustment being that in terms of the Gul'dan nets them the win on Tomb of the Spider Queen, which still begs the question, if you go first pick, you don't seem to get a win.
It's just, it's strange that that's the thing right now, that usually it would, like back months ago, it was you need the first pick so you can essentially control the draft. But right now it's seemingly the opposite. You pick the map so you can control the draft from the second pick. It's strange how things have developed, but that seems to be where we're at right now. Second pick has been winning all throughout tonight, all throughout the Western Clash.
Yeah.
It's just a thing right now, apparently.
What's interesting about this is I want to see how we going into game number 2. If Crimson decide once again to stick to this formula and say, well, I guess this is what we need, right? We need those 2 picks. We can allow one to go through, but we're discussing that, hey, this is actually giving us a lot more to work with, and especially on a map that we're comfortable with too, we're going to be able to net that all-important win, which is important for them, because if you go, 0-2 on a night when it's streamed, not only do you feel a sense of responsibility and guilt for playing like that, but if you've got the whole community watching you as well, it's hard to try and bite that public bullet, which is inevitably going to be coming flying right at you.
Yeah, not wanting to suffer the 0-2 or the 0-4, I guess, over the course of the night. Making a big statement with this game, wanting to kind of make the most out of the rest of this night. And that's a pretty good start to this series. I mean, we were a little bit worried how they were going to be coming into this one, especially coming up against what we were suspecting is going to be a tough opposition in Outlaws. But I'm starting to think, during the break between these 2 series, it could have just been a bit of a stylistic mismatch in favor of Downfall that could have been Crimson's downfall. But whereas we're looking at the style of Outlaws and Crimson, they're a little bit more similar, and is allowing Crimson to be much more comfortable in their style. So it's something that we could really look towards going throughout this season.
Almost a case of like you're exercising a greater understanding of a certain style. And I think if you try and reflect this back to other games, right, there's times where you got poke beats engage, and engage loses to sustain. So you've got these kind of like these formulas, almost like a Bermuda Triangle of like how to play the video game,
like a rock paper scissors kind of thing.
Right, this beats that, and that counters this. So it's almost a case of both of these teams are the rock in this this kind of crude analogy, right?
Yeah.
And they're both bashing together, but somebody has a bigger fist than the other. In this case, it is Crimson, but it's looking like we have a lobby. So I am keen to see which map we are going towards and where the action goes from here. I am seeing Towers of Doom as the map, and I am seeing Crimson as the map picker. So it seems to me as if that is the formula.
Yeah, managing to get map pick and also second pick yet again. So I'm not sure if Outlaws have wisened onto that this first pick curse just yet, or if they are just looking to just upset that curse themselves.
Do you think, Jill, it's early enough to say at this stage that there is a distinct difference after tonight's results? Like, would you be rating Downfall a lot higher after tonight from what we've seen, or do you think it's too early based on we need to see them go up against, say, the Outlaws and go up against Nomia, and from then we can really get an understanding of where they fit?
Yeah, I think that's it. We need to see them against some different styles, and probably some teams that are more willing to try and react a bit better to that style, because I think what we saw from that previous series was that Crimson wasn't really adapting. They were still trying to play with their aggressive style, and we just saw consistently Downfall just going for that reactive, and it was just very much dismantling that. In this series against Outlaws, now we have to see whether or not Outlaws are going to be able to make an adjustment in their style to try and deal with what Crimson are bringing to the table.
I suppose the most noticeable difference that we saw from Series 1 to Series 2, just whilst we wait for these players to get themselves ready in the lobby, was just the level of execution. You saw such a clean, methodical style of play with a draft which was very counteractive, right? But with this one here, there were times where you saw a few questionable mistakes, right? Like Bless Shields is completely missing, Icebox for no reason. I don't want to single players out, but at the same time, you almost have to say, like, is this a case of them being not warmed up? Or is this just a case of, as we say in this analogy, 2 rocks bashing together, but they're not on the same scale?
You could look at some of the misplays, and maybe it's a bit of nerves, maybe it's a bit of just as you mentioned, probably not being as warmed up as, say, Crimson, who have played a full series before this, who are very much warmed up and looking to keep the ball rolling. And we'll have to see how Outlaws react into this next game, because they need to make an adjustment, because what they were doing there, it wasn't really working out for them.
Well, without further ado, we are ready to jump on into game number 2. Crimson currently 1-0 in the lead, and will be looking for the W on the night. It is a best of 3 of 3, and they do not want to finish this one. Week number 2 with 2 losses to their name, as they go in with the map pick, meaning they have a second pick at that.
And essentially what we've been seeing at the high ends of the draft, things like the Maev, things like the Malfurion from the previous series, Blaze is a very common ban that we're seeing. He's just got a lot of strength and is very annoying to deal with, so I wouldn't be surprised to see those populate the high end of this draft. But we'll just have to wait and see what they end up going with. If Outlaws are wanting to try and adjust their style a bit, or if they want to try and secure one of those, trying to secure a particular high priority pick for themselves.
We've seen a lot of focus on the Blaze as well as the Maev as the ban priorities. Now, I don't want to say that's going to change too much, but I would like to see, and there we go. I was just going to say, I would like to see the Tracer, another fantastic map, arguably even one of her best. The ability to dart between all the different capture points and just be such a nuisance in a very short-styled map. The other one just had to be the Abathur. I'm really curious to see how Abathur, if at all, is involved in this draft.
Yeah, and if they do ban the Abathur, that does leave both the Blaze and the Tyrael up, also the Malfurion. So those options, that could be a first pick. But if they do leave more than enough on the table, it could secure at least 2 of them for themselves. So if they do, in fact, ban that Abathur, if the Malfurion is picked up first on the side of Outlaws, it looks like it could be a Maev ban, still a very strong pick, not wanting to allow that one to go through. Whichever hero is picked up first for the Outlaws, Crimson can pick up 2 on the backswing, so they're going to be pretty happy with how this is going to work out.
Based on this, as what we've been talking about earlier in tonight, it's 2 very different team styles, and the 2 different the 2 different team. How do I say, like, the map mechanics in terms of like the map style between Tracer and Maev. They are very unique in terms of how they approach the draft, and by banning both of these out, you kind of choke yourself into a very old school, traditional style of gameplay, I suppose is what I'm trying to get, where you're looking at, like, you know, your traditionals, your ETCs, your Greymanes, your Tychus even, right? You're going back to what was before, you know, a long time ago, a traditional.
Yeah, or even we could even see the Shimada brothers come in at some point throughout these drafts. They are still very strong, and now that we've got 2 of the high priority assassins taken off the board, they could even make an appearance again. But it does leave the Blaze available, so they are not going to allow the Blaze Tyrael combination to come out for the side of Crimson. Very strong pickup to grab right off the bat for the side of Outlaws. And they can do pretty much anything with that first pick, really. If you want to put him as a main tank, not as common, but it can be done. You can even throw him into a solo lane. He's got the wave clear to do it. He's got so many defensive tools at his disposal. He can survive pretty much an Inferno for days. He's just an all-round strong pick right now.
Seems to me, with these 2 picks now, I would be betting in a standard format that would be going for, like, a Tyrael as well as a Stukov, a very strong denial pick as well as strong in its own damn right. If I was to be, before Western Clash, I'd be saying Malfurion as well as the ETC, but I feel like if you were to go down that kind of draft, you just lose flat out based on what the response could then be from the Outlaws.
Yeah, I believe the Tyrael is going to be picked. There it goes. Tyrael, very strong. It's actually going to be the Greymane alongside it. So we saw it in their first series, wanting to go for this very dive-heavy composition. They're trying to go for it again. We'll see how they adjust throughout the draft and whether or not Outlaws are going to make a similar adjustment to what Downfall did against them, bringing out things like the Junkrat and the Cassia to negate a lot of the damage coming out from that aggressive lineup.
Begs the question now from the side of Outlaws, what do they decide to utilize in this pick rotation? With the support being passed away, they obviously get the first pick of that one. Malfurion, whilst many have considered to be the strongest support in the Arsenal so far, didn't really meet its mark last game. Now they have banned away to Tracer, which could be a bit of a indicator that they're thinking of going Mouth once again. Otherwise, I've never actually seen Hiccup play the Stukov.
Yeah, it's actually going to be the ETC picked up, so shoring up that front line, so that is their main tank and their supplementary tank, and also the Malfurion. So that is an incredibly solid 3 picks for the side of the Outlaws, and it's really going to be onto the side of Crimson, where they need to be able to deal with that, because how are you going to push through all of that defensive utility?
These are comfort picks for the Outlaws. Icebolt, very well known for his ETC and his ability to use stage dive, but he would probably be going for the Mosh Pit at this stage. But that is an arguable point, because Tyrael up against ETC, a bit of a skill matchup, almost a bit of a bait, like when you can try and bait out the use of a global. Are you going to Sank? Are you going to Mosh? Who is going to come out first? The Sank could find incredible value up against the 3 that have been locked in by the Outlaws so far. And you can already see them thinking, hey, we know what happened when we versed a team like this on the side of Downfall. The Cassia was a bit of an issue. We probably don't really fancy going for the Nubrak again as a reliable way of trying to shut that one down.
Yeah, and another pick that they were going up against in that lineup was the Junkrat, and I'm just wondering, do they potentially pick it up for themselves? Do they have someone who is comfortable enough on the hero to be able to play around that and potentially just disrupt the lineup of Outlaws? We talk about wanting to disrupt the diving pressure coming out from Crimson, but there's a lot of potential dive on the side of Outlaws. The HTC can go sliding in. The Jet Propulsion from the Blaze, he can go sliding in himself. They can play very aggressive with that lineup, and I'm just wondering whether or not the Junkrat could be used to disrupt some of that aggressive play.
Just wondering what other potential... They do go for the Stukov in the end, okay. I mean, I decided in that first rotation that Stukov paired with the Tyrael alone would have been very strong, and they recognised that same value once again from Game 1 to Game 2, so it translates across. Now put you in a bit of a predicament where you think, do we go for the Uther? Do we try and do what we did against Downfall with that double centrification or the double protection style of play? Or do we try and go for a bit more of a sustained support? My bet would be that they want to go back to that Rhaegar, much like they had the sustained DPS in the Gul'dan last game. It seems to be, yes, we know that you respectably like to play this aggressive style, but you almost need that patching, that backup option if things don't go according to plan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if what kind of adjustment the Crimson are going to be making compared to what they had in their previous game in a draft that was looking very similar to what it is right now. Like, as you mentioned, go for some of that. Well, I guess they kind of need some extra cleanup damage, because we saw them consistently going in but not really being able to finish off at that point. And with this Genji, they probably do have more than enough of that diving pressure to just clean up some of those low HP heroes and then just play the fight from there. So they are going to also pick up the Nubrak. You were mentioning that didn't nearly have the same amount of have the effect that they were expecting it to have in that previous game, but they are going to be sticking with it again, and they're only leaving their support for their last pick, which is interesting.
I quite like it, actually, because it means they can really respond to what is locked in here. If you pick the Uther too early, the response is, 2 picks? And 2 picks that are going to be DPS. So I'm thinking, Lunara, Tychus, somebody that can output a ton of damage, which the Uther just cannot seem to deal with. So the Nubrak, like we said in game number 1 against Downfall, should then reliably be able to take out somebody like the Malfurion, but RB once again saying it should be that Blaze from the bunker. As the Genji really is kind of like faded out of the meta, but should be able to keep up and act almost like a Tracer. But there you see, Tychus and Junkrat, that's the annoying poke we were kind of wondering if it would come out again.
Yeah.
So you've got the support pick now, and I'm thinking, Uther, whilst nice, you saw it happen last time, right? And I'm thinking maybe an AoE support.
Yeah, we could seem to just default back to that Rhaegar, as you were mentioning before. Or even something like a Karazim, something that can allow them to go a little bit more forward, just pretty much facilitate that diving style of play, who wants to go in with them. I'm just trying to think of what other supports could really fulfill that role while also outputting enough healing that they can deal with a lot of that long-range pressure.
think the issue with the other game, right, was you only really had the Grey main that was reliably able to try and chase down the Junkrat. I feel like if you go for a Karazim and really invest into the dive, you leave yourself very susceptible to the ability of a Blaze, just to get like a 5-man propulsion, easy stacks from Malfurion. Don't think it's the go-to. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Uther. Okay, Lucio is nice. Lucio is nice. It's similar to a Rhaegar in the AoE capabilities, but it gives you that ability like, hey, this isn't working. I think we just need to make sure that they don't try and stack the sound barrier with the sanctification.
Yeah, that's one thing we see a little bit far more often than we would like to think, that you accidentally stacking those two and all of a sudden you're mitigating some of the advantages out of it. But yeah, it's also helping out with that very forward pressure that they want to be using. They want to be getting onto that back line and really taking care of those damage dealers, and that's something that they can do with that Lucio that you can't really do with an Uther. You can only just throw heals out from afar and help out from the backlines, but this Lucio should be able to help them not only just get to the backline but also rotate around the map. So very much liking that pick for this composition.
Game number 2 on Tales of Doom, with Crimson leading the series 1-0 on the night, back-to-back on-stream games. And they'll be looking for the 2-0 to get themselves bouncing back from the defeat they suffered earlier on this night. On the left-hand side, in the blue, ironically, against their own name, Crimson's Ultivian. He is on Grey main. Jesmes is playing Material. Kevier on Inubarak. Shadow is on Lucio. And Azure on Genji.
And on the red side, we have the Outlaws. We have Lahal on the Tychus. Coffee is on the Junkrat. Gondo is on Blaze. Hiccup is on the Malfurion. And Ice Bolt Water is on the ETC.
Quite actually interesting to note how much you can really tell from the draft in the sense of what their bans were. They banned away the Tracer for what we were originally assuming to be because of the mouth. But also the Junkrat. Junkrat is extremely squishy, much like the Chromie of last game. But the Genji does function in the same kind of capacity, right? Extremely annoying to get jumped upon. If you actually have a look at what his talents are, he has gone for the standard Swift striking build. I was wondering if we'd maybe venture into a shuriken build and try and sit on his face and just go for the one shot, as opposed to trying to dash around getting resets.
Yeah, very interesting that we are going to be seeing that Swift strike, but it looks like he wants to be, as you mentioned, just Swift striking, getting those resets, and especially once we get to level 10 with that Dragon Blade, wanting to really clean up a lot of those later game fights. So very interesting, and I'm very intrigued to see how these later game fights are going to go with so many defensive options on both sides.
So we haven't really been focusing too much on the solo lane matchups as the nights progressed. I mean, we can have a quick look at it now in the top lane. Gondo is going to be on the Blaze. Now, Blaze is very frustrating to go up against. A lot of sustain, but doesn't have the best wave clearing potential, right? So a lot of the times you're seeing heroes that have sustain in their own right, be it Material, be it an ETC, which aren't the strongest lane bullies themselves, but can match that kind of tempo. You can see right now Gondo has won that one out for the meantime, allowing him to do a double soak, but that shouldn't be the most chaotic lane match to keep your eyes on. Should still be on this 4-man rotation. As you can see, Outlaws were looking to try and deny that Sapper camp.
Yeah, it doesn't in the end go over to Crimson, so it's just going to be equalized pressure on both sides, as we are going to have Sapper camps pushing in to the middle of that lane, as we are going to have both teams really just hovering around here, wanting to look for any potential engage, but it looks like it's just going to be equalizing pressure right now.
One of my favourite talents in the game, Dash on level 1 for Tyke. As you get those globes, your Dash becomes an absolute nightmare to try and deal with. And they'll be looking to try and bounce between lanes, much the same as KVA has adapted with the Regeneration Master, as opposed to your typical spell shield. So the rotations, just like on the Tomb of Spider Queen match, will definitely be there. You can already see him adapting once again by going for the exoskeleton, but that's going to be the Chaos jumping on in with the burrow and saying sweet dream to Tychus. We speak about him, the caster curse is real. He gets killed, and the ults will be up just in time for him to respawn too. A
brilliant time to be grabbing that kill. It allows Crimson to position around the map. It looks like they'll want to start moving towards this bottom side, as RBW is wanting to play very far forward, but here comes the rest of the members of Crimson. They want to push back the Outlaws.
They do indeed. The root comes up to Hiccup's head. Oh, nearly bought him enough time, but no, the cocktail from downtown does secure the splash damage that they desperately needed. He's out for 10 seconds. Lights out. Azure starts to cap the rest of Crimson zone on out. Blaze as well as Tyrion zone on out, but hang on a minute. action is still carrying on. Lucio gets down.
Yeah, nice little pickup there for the side of Outlaws. Lahal and Iceball just able to clean him up. A little bit too far forward for the Lucio, not really respecting the amount of control and damage coming out of that Outlaws lineup, but in the end it is going to be essentially a one for one, and also, but it also will, let me try and start that sentence again. It was two altars being picked up for the side of Crimson, so they had that little bit of an early advantage, but in terms of experience, it's slightly in favor of Outlaws so far.
What's interesting for me is that Shed Exoskeleton for the Anubrek is almost like a bit of an on-the-fly adaptation to the slow that this oil spill from Blaze is going to do, right? He's otherwise going to be a very slow bug. We know how squishy he is, much like EPC. It should give him the ability to try and run away, because just look how much punishment he receives right there as they try and go for the camp. They're actually going to back away. The explosive mine sitting on top of that one, they're going to bully him off. It's a bit of a pincer maneuver really being set up here so far by the side of Crimson. Outlaws stuck in the middle of the safe space, which they realise, we get the camp, let's just get out of this one. And they avoid any fight, but I tell you what, Crimson are quite lucky to not drop any members just there. Yeah,
there's a lot of damage going down onto the Crimson members, but they're very low. Multiple of them, as we saw right there, a lot of control and damage coming in from this Outlaws lineup, and it's very hard for Crimson to stick around, and especially when we get into those very narrow corridors. There's a lot of AoE damage from that Tigers with those grenades, and also that overkill, and also just all those grenades being thrown around by the Junkrat makes it very hard to stick around in those close quarters.
Quite interesting, actually. We actually, for the first time, see the Wizened Duelist being picked up here in ANZ in its new form. That should give them a lot of diving potential, making sure they can secure the kill. Got to be very aware, really, of Hiccup, however, because that is a direct counter towards Greymane's Worgen form. As the altar phase is available, a single altar left, just in that bottom lane. But Crimson have no intentions, as the Shadow is left to his own device. The rest of the team go up top to try and pick up Gondo.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of damage to him, but he does have the jet propulsion to get out of there, so in the end it is going to be equalizing the amount of damage onto each core, but it looks like it's just going to be an attempt at trading pressure, but Crimson, they're just not able to really put anything on that top side of the map. They wanted to make a play, but there was nothing up there for them, and in the end they're just going to lose a lot of damage onto this bottom side bell tower. Just a rather perplexing play coming out from Crimson.
I think really the idea behind that was they committed so many resources into trying to find that kill, they get punished by the fact that they didn't really get it. And Outlaws can really abuse that fact by going for some pressure on the bell tower. Now, you'll see some interesting cases that are met here is a lot of teams won't actually pick up these bell towers until the very last second, try to get the damage down low. And when the altars do spawn, go for the cap then, that way ensuring you get the extra shots during that almost invulnerable state that they are in for those good few seconds. Sapper camps are picked up. Crimson looking to try and do the same, but level 10 is on the horizon.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be coming up first for the side of Outlaws. It looks like they're trying to play very aggressive because of that, as we do have them picked up. It is going to be the mosh pit. No stage dive shenanigans coming out for that ETC. And it looks like Crimson, they're just trying to rush to that level 10 to try and match that, and especially with these next two altars coming up right now.
How much PTSD do Crimson have from the Junkrat Riptide? Will the Sanctification be there in time to negate it, or will the Soundbearer be the hero that they need to equalize things out rather than a Divine Shield? We're going to find out as the Sapper Camp does go through. Perfectly timed for the Altar Phase, 2 apiece up in 10 seconds, but the Fire Dream is there, the Soundbearer is better, the Mosh Pit actually bringing them out, but dropping the pain as they come down with a 1-for-1. They look for Junkrat, and that's assured doing the damage with the Dragon's Blade. The Cocoon onto Tychus. He is in the Odin doing what he can, but now it is Crimson on the back foot running. They're gunning what they can to try and survive. Ooh, KVA just gets the burrow charge at the last second, gaining that shield that he so desperately needed. And I tell you what, Crimson are lucky not to have more casualties than just the one. They had to lose 2 altars as a result.
Yeah, and that was a lot of heroics burnt on both sides, and there was a lot used just to kill that Greymane, and in the end they just didn't have enough to keep it going with the fight, and it was a great counter engage coming out from Crimson, but they just weren't able to get much more than what they did because of the fact that they had also lost that bell tower, and they had to be very careful with how they played around that position, as KVA getting caught out.
So lucky there not to get power slid onto, as the Impale is clipped just at the right time, and a burrow charge that got interrupted very early on. Here's the interesting adaptation, however, no go for the throat. This time it's going to be the Cursed Bullet, which I would argue is a direct pickup towards the Blaze. Such a tanky hero. and with just a regular Greymon and Genji alone, they would not have enough damage to try and take him on down.
Yeah, and it's looking quite good for the side of the Outlaws. They do have the core advantage, and they're getting a lot of these fights to go very well. It's just that experience is looking quite good for Crimson. They're able to get advantages around the map because of that, and they are sticking in this fight, sticking in this game, and it's Towers of Doom. This is one of the maps that it's never over until it's over.
Forced to pop the bunker, but the bunker has a very short cooldown, so that'll be up shortly before the next skirmish does eventuate. Level 13 is where these teams are going for, but will they have enough time for this one? The skirmish once again breaks on out to the ulti spawn in 25 seconds. 1 point just there. Cocoon is out.
Oh, great.
Titans just drops in a heartbeat. The curse bullet is there, and the member falls to the floor. Perfectly timed and perfectly executed. Blaze separated from the team, too low from the fact that that skirmish had broken out before. Not able to follow on through, and these are some shots that Crimson desperately need.
Yeah, they are able. It looks like they will be able to get these. Outlaws aren't going to be pressuring it too much. So, as you mentioned, it's what they really needed. They have been giving up a lot of pressure around the map and a lot of these altars. So, able to get a little bit back in their favor. They're still within striking distance of the Outlaws. And now that they have level 13, they are, as I mentioned, they are getting advantages in terms of XP, and they're able to maintain control of the fights because of that. There's still a long way to go in this game.
There is indeed. It's early days for this one. Level 13 is there. A very small window. Can they get the collapse, the burrow, the impale? And the curse ball are all pumped into Icebolt as he gets a bit aggressive himself and says, if you want to fight, let's fight. But they decide it is not the case. Now Blaze is in a bit of a precarious situation. Forced to drop the bunker. There goes the Cocoon very early on. Looking for it again. Re-engaged. Twilight Dream. Mosh Pit maybe. Riptire. Bounces into the back line, but it gets negated by that Sandbro. We're not going to find the same value that they found in game number 1. The ice block is used very early on, protected by Blaze, but not protected enough. Oh! Interrupt. No chance for a mosh pit as 2 members of Crimson are taken apart. Once again, dearie me, so fortunate not to have more.
Yeah, that could have been much worse, but it could have been much better. Managing to not manage the burrow charge coming out of the Anubrak didn't manage to hit that Malfurion, which allowed him to get off that Twilight Dream, and which really turned that fight on its head. If they had managed to lock down that Malfurion with that control, I think they could have had that much better. But a nice slide over the wall, cleans up Shadow, and actually going to be able to get out of that.
This is classic Icebolt. He always goes for the crowd surfer, and you don't exactly know where he's going to be coming at you from. In this case there, Shadow a little bit too elusive with those rollerblades, able to run away, get ready for the weekend and get his party on. A root comes down, not going to be the case though, because Cocoon is there onto ETC, still has the mosh pit available if he needs it. He might go for it now, he gets onto one, but the boot, Isley is taking it out, and that's going to be a sanctification to prevent any kind of Twilight Dream.
Great little pickup there, and a great little boot coming out from Shadow, managing to interrupt that mosh pit. So great little pick up there, and it looks like they're going to be able to pick up all 3 of the altars for the side of Crimson, really bringing their way back into this game.
They need this. They're behind in XP, down level, but not down and out of this game. Able to find the picks, and they're looking for more. KVA goes to the right, the rest of the team go downtown. Lahal puts a lot of pressure onto Ultivian, forcing out the knee-jerk reaction. Has to drop the sound barrier there, Shadow, and that is enough pressure to allow Icebolt to go in for this cap.
Yeah, this is one of the altars that is incredibly easy to defend for the side of the Outlaws, especially with the tools that they have at their disposal. We saw there Coffee on the Junkrat, able to stand completely in his base, away from any potential harm, and just throw grenades over the wall, making it very easy to interrupt any potential capture. So it looked like Crimson, realizing that, not wanting to draw that out any longer than it needed to, just gives it up, understanding that you're not really going to be getting too much value out of playing around that altar.
Level 16 is now there for the side of Outlaws, and you're not going to see any kind of contest from Crimson for 2 reasons really. One, they don't have their all-important ultimates between sound barrier and sanctification, but because they need 16 as well. And this is going to be a case of the Outlaws looking for the invade, pushing this advantage that they have, and going for the sapper shots. Looking for the clean shots at that 25-12. Yes, the fights have been looking clean for Crimson in many cases, but the macro game strategy that this map all boils down to is definitely in favor of Outlaws.
Yeah, in a very good position, and sure you can give up as altars left, right, and center if you're on the defensive side, but there's only so much you can Only so many times you can do that before you're really starting to get put under the hammer. And they could still potentially give up 1 or 2 more altars the side of Crimson, but have to be very careful as we get later and later into this game. They need to start making plays happen. They are up to level 16 now, so they can fight on even talent tiers, and they need to get something working so they can start to claw back at that core lead.
As the game gets later, the picks that they find are that much more important. They go for the burrow charge. Good look at Gondo. No chance for the bunker. It comes on down, but it means nothing. The cocoon's down to Titans. KJ's looking for more. They're going to try and interrupt the potential for a mosh pit. Collapsing onto Iceball. He's running, and he is gunning as Lahal's sitting in there in the back, trying to pop that minigun, do whatever he can to try and whittle these little members down. But let's not forget, it's Coffee. He's playing Junkrat. This is a hero that he says, I love. And he's going to sit in a position up here, looking to try and poke one down, but he just took a little bit too long to get into that position. And the shots are fired from Crimson, making sure that they are still at a healthy lead.
Yeah, Coffee just was not able to get into that same position, as we do have an engage on Hiccup, forced to blow the ice block, so that's a cooldown that Crimson are going to be very happy to blow coming into any potential fight within the next minute or so. So nice little pick up there, also able to pick up both of the altars. And Crimson are making their way back into this game. It's 12-17, and it's still anyone's game right now.
It really is. Their GL 6 kills to 4, looking for KBA right now. Not going to burn a mosh pit onto just that. Mine comes across. They follow things up. They pick up the Sapper Camp, however. You can see a little bit of desperation from Iceball saying, let's try and force a fight. These guys are picking apart our backline. This is not exactly what we are after. Coffee being so far so good with these mines, able to find these picks and really trying to disrupt the flow of action. But now we get into a stalemate once again, looking for Gondo. They isolate him. The bunker comes across. He pops in, he pops out, buys enough time for his team to come in with the rotate. And I tell you what, Gondo is a man literally playing with my heart right now.
That was a lot of damage coming out of Crimson, but then again, the bunker is a pretty good heroic right now. He can get you out of pretty much anything, so he is going to be safe, but that is going to be cooldown down for, well, only 20 seconds. It's not too bad in the terms of cooldowns, but it's something they won't be able to use for this invade coming out from Crimson onto the Sapper Camp. So nice little play there coming out from Crimson. And they're going to be able to get a little bit of position coming to this next altar phase.
How do Crimson play this one? Or for a better question, how do Outlaws play this one? They're all in the bottom lane so far. They spot out Gondo. KJ's playing this one patiently. Ooh, he nearly went for it, but he decides against it, waiting for Iceball because he assumes he's going to use that Crowd Surfer. But the patience and the diligence comes across from both tank players. Ult's up in 10 seconds, 2 apiece, 4 shots for either team as all the bell towers stay alive. You can see the posturing from Crimson so far as let's go for the invade again. We need these shots.
Yeah, and with the one member, the Tyrael, taking care of one of them, they are trying to get an interrupt onto Coffee on the right side. They're not able to get it as they do end up securing it.
Now it comes down to the team fight. The objective is gone. Can they find the collapse? They're not going to look for this one. It's far too close to that danger mine line. Not enough chasing potential, especially with the likes of what? A Tyrael, a Lucio, and a Genji. You want that fair bit of track to chase them down with.
Yeah, now we're seeing Crimson trying to get a gank in one of these fancy brushes, but Gondo, very aware of the play coming out, just throws a whole bunch of oil into it, finds the rest of Crimson, and realizing they're trying to make a play, but we are just a little bit too smart for that right now.
They were hungry. They really were hungry. Spotting the fact that Coffee was down bot lane. Would have been a 4v5. That would have been a great situation for them, especially knowing that there would be no disruptive mines nor a Riptide to try and end their misery. Quick look at the stacks on these quests. We've got 11 stacks out of the 30 for Wisdom Duelist, so going to give him a little bit of extra damage, but not a whole bunch. It's about 11% extra damage to be specific, compared to the 8 broccoli stacks. So a little trend that will spawn, a little bit of damage, but what is it really trying to prevent? I'm just trying to think, what is it trying to... I mean, generally speaking, you see the entangling roots for the larger or the extra stun, but this seems to be a flavor of the month really for Hiccup.
Yeah, just wanting to have that extra body in the fight, I guess. Just wanting to, I don't know, apply a little bit of extra pressure, but in the end, we do end up having both teams trading bell towers on the top and the mid. So in the end, it's not going to end up being any team favored coming into this next altar.
Yeah.
And now it's just going to be back to even playing field. Level 20 is almost up for the side of Crimson, and they need to make something happen because they are down to 8 shots onto their core, and have to be very careful with how they play these next few minutes.
This almost feels like GL, the grand final of the Western Clash. We are just playing it shrine by shrine, altar by altar. Azure jumps on in, gets the shurikens to prevent that one. They're going to KJ, he's low. The Curse Bullet is there onto Gondo. Sanctification and the Sound Barrier. Two extremely big defensive cooldowns popped. And Outlaws need to now make something of this because Crimson are without a lifeline.
What were we saying during the draft? We want to see them not do that exact thing, not stacking the Sanctification and the Sound Barrier. And as you mentioned, two massive defensive heroics on the side of Crimson now down as looks like they just want to keep on going in with the fight.
A lot of this is trying to prevent Iceball from going for that kill. He's going to crowd surf across. Riptide comes across. Not going to do too much, to be quite honest.
Yeah, the members of Crimson have spread out more than enough that it's not going to get the same value as it does actually not land on anything. Wow. And this Altars in the middle is still up and available.
The punishment isn't there, but Gondo gets dropped to 500, manages to run away, leeching from the oil spill. But he is low, and I don't know if he has that well tip available. He's not posturing as if he does. They try and collapse onto the Shadow, but this is a case of teams going back and forth, trying to fragment the positioning. And it's working so far for Outlaws because they're not even 20 GL.
Yeah, it's with the 20 up for the side of Crimson. You'd think that they're going to be able to get the play to happen, but Azure slams himself right onto a trap.
He does, and he didn't realize it was there. It was too little too late. He falls on down. Odin is being popped as Lahar was low. He jumps into the bunker. He gets some armor. He runs away. He's got a lot of pressure on his tail right now. Dropped at 50. Don't tell me he lives. KVA with the burrow charge. Hits him with the horn. And the Cocoon comes out for the second time looking for the re-engage. Stand Barrier is available. Sanctification up in 4 seconds if they can utilize it. Right. Sanctification needs to come down now. Surely there is no mosh pit. It's already been interrupted. And they're just fighting off so much damage, and still the altar lives.
In the end, it's just going to be an extended 1-for-1, trading the Genji for the Tychus, and they were able to take down that Tychus, even though the Genji went down fairly early in that fight. And looking at the altars, or looking at the bell towers right now, it's in favor of Crimson. That top one has not been taken down yet, where the middle one did, and it looks like they want to be able to get this shrine for themselves.
They do indeed. This is extra money for them. Riptide coming up from downtown again. Gondo runs on in. They try and get that pressure. They don't go for KVA. It's not who they're after. Coffee really indecisive this one, waiting for the last second. And rightfully so, almost using it like a zoning tool to say, these shots are ours.
What? Does manage to land onto the Lucio, but he will be able to regain a lot of that health. He's quite strong with that those extended fights late on into this game, as we do have Lahal and Azure on the top side of this fight doing a lot of damage to each other, as Lahal wanting to take the fight himself. They do both have to go back, but the Sanctification has been popped, and they're going to take down Gondo.
He's so low. The bunker is there, but he's going to pop out. He is going to pop out and live. Every member is low. This has been such an extended team fight. The Icebolt is in there. He doesn't have mosh, but he doesn't seem to care. The Icebolt is good. It lives. And Azure jumps out. It's a 1-for-1. Oh, dearie me. DPS for support. The Altar still lives, but the members have no mana. They just can't keep this up. Outlaws with the advantage.
They just keep on going. Coffee is trying to get it, but they don't manage to secure it. And in the end, that bottom bell tower does go, so it is going to be back to even shots for both sides.
Mosh pit gets cancelled at 10 seconds.
Oh, the bunker!
In. The bunker is there. Azure and Shadow, they are the dream team. What can they do? What can they do indeed? He swift strikes across, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's it.
Mosh into the red tire. And now they go for Shadow as well. He gets the boop across. But finally, what seemed like an eternity ends up with the 4 shots firing for the Outlaws.
That was such an extended fight. How long did they go for? It went for like, what, 5+ minutes?
Literally 5 minutes. It feels like an eternity.
And now, with so many members down on the side of Crimson, they're just going to go for the boss, and this will just finish it right here, right now.
And it will. 4 shots and not a member in sight. Shadow is there. Shadow and Altivian, the dream. What can they do? He goes for Lahal. That's one.
Looking
for the second sound barrier.
Oh, the sound barrier comes out perfectly.
The boss is still alive. It's going to be Ulti on the point alone. The boot comes across the Twilight Dream. It's still going to be enough. The shots are fired. And just like that, we are back to 1 apiece. This series is surely heating up.
Wow, what a game. it was such a back and forth game. It looked like Crimson were going to be able to get back into it. It looked like Outlaws were going to just be able to secure it. But that 5+ minute fight towards the end, anyone could have taken it at any point during that fight. But over the course of it, it was the Outlaws that managed to grind out that fight. And we are going to be going to a game 3, and both teams have got to be exhausted after a game like that.
I mean, that final team fight before that boss was so extended. It was after, multiple cooldown cycles, multiple minor issues. It was a slugfest. And it obviously, in the end, resulted in that early game pressure from the Outlaws being enough to give them a position where they could end it like such. Yes, a lot of the times they weren't winning the fights as convincingly, or KVA and the rest were able to find those engages and get those all-important picks, but at the end of the day, it was almost a case of we'll definitely sacrifice a team fight loss to go for an objective, go for a altar, and inevitably go for the 1-all tie. This is game number 3 now. It's a lot closer, and you'd almost argue this is what you would have thought maybe series number 1 of the night would have gone like.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I'm very intrigued to see how this final game of the night is going to go. We've seen these very similar styles of teams just clashing. We're talking about in the whole rock, paper, scissors of styles. Both of these teams seem to be a bit of a rock. Both of them seem to be a rock, and they just keep on clashing against each other. The first game does go to Crimson in rather dominant fashion. The second one, it was a bit of a grind, but Outlaws do pull it out in the end. Who knows what's going to happen in the third one? And also to note, first pick did finally get a win tonight.
It did. So the curse on if you pick first, then you just are destined not to win has been broken. And now we're going to find out where we go for map number 3. I'm getting the invite right now. What is the map choice? That is where we are going to find out which team is the strongest. Sky Temple. Oh boy. All about the global, all about the macro. I've been begging for an Abathur all game long, all night long. Surely. As
you mentioned, we were wanting it all night long, and this is, to be honest, a lot of the maps we've been seeing tonight, you could throw in an Abathur there, but this is another one of those maps where you do tend to see that hero pick up quite a bit of priority. But considering some of the priorities we've been seeing some of these teams place on the heroes, I'm not entirely sure we'll be seeing it again, unfortunately, but
yeah,